what separates a great property manager from a good one? Let's just avoid the really crappy ones. But what separates the good from the great?
Oh, good question. It comes down to there's the job roles that they're entitled to do, obviously paying them to do. But there's just that little bit of that emphasis which comes from a number of things: experience, knowledge, communication, organisation, problem solving.
Do you have any examples of some property managers that, I mean, in our last pod, you did mention around getting something fixed in your unit in Cooley, but do you have examples of, I mean, I've got some examples with my properties, but I'd love to hear some of yours.
Yeah, so we'll start with experience, right? So when you're looking around, the turnover rate with property managers is quite high because it's quite a intense job. You've got to be a real people person.
You mean the turnover in the firms is high?
Oh,
not between
in the industry, the property manager industry. Like it's from memory, it's like a 9 to 12 month life cycle of a property manager, where people come in, they do the job, and then they move on to something else because it's just one, they don't get paid enough to deal with what they have to deal with, because you've got whinging tenants, you've got whinging owners, you've got things breaking. They're problem solvers. So you've got to find those people who have been in the industry for a number of years and still love it, and that's the key. And that comes through interviewing them, asking for referrals, and also just really trying to understand what makes them tick when you're talking to them. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm just going to get granular here. So that means you could go to a property management firm and ask them, how long have you been in the industry? And they're going to tell you, a couple of decades or whatever it is. But then you might get switched between different agents, and this is what we talked about with your property, is you might get switched between different agents, as somebody might come in for 9 months or 12 months, they might manage your property and hand it over to the next person who doesn't give a crap, and then you've got to deal with somebody that, is like having you to try and problem solve how to fix this issue in the unit, and you're basically doing their job because they suck at what they do. And so how do we get the individual and keep the individual, not just the firm?
Oh, yeah. So when you go into a property management agreement, generally you're signing up to a 12-month agreement for them to manage a property. And you're at the beck and call of that individual property manager that you've selected. You try and ask those questions up front. All the lessons I've learned is you don't just find them as a great property manager and they tick all those boxes. Ask them deeper questions into, well, what are you working towards in your career, and where do you see yourself in the next 12 months? Because I'm doing this 12-month lease, I want to be with you as a person, not the firm. Because in my experience, I've had some really great property managers that I've been working with, and they've been poached from other firms, and because they are good and they can see that's the type of person that they want to invest in, because they know they're going to be a lifelong property manager, which is going to be great for their business, because, as you know, staff turnover is quite painful. We've got to retrain people. And that's why I try to limit it to a 12-month agreement. They'll try and sign you up to a 2-year agreement. And then you're stuck with them, and there's break fees involved in that if you decide to move on. But everything is a negotiation when it comes down to that point too.
Such a good point, because I'm with a property management agency in WA with my WA property, and I had a really good property manager, Lisa, for the first sort of year.
Hi, Lisa. Well done.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. And actually, just thinking about this, Lisa, I'm going to have to call you, because I got handed over, it feels like, to somebody else, and then just in the last couple of months, a couple of issues have popped up, and this person has been like, what do you want to do about it? Like, here's the ball, it's in your court, like, what do you want to do? Whereas Lisa would just say, this has happened, do you want me to do this? And she'll give me 3 different options or 2 different options, and I'll be like, option 1, and she'd go away and get the thing sorted and be like, it's done, I'll send you the bill. I'm like, perfect, that's exactly what I wanted. But now I'm getting like, I'm having to use my brain and take up my capacity to solve this problem when that's what I'm paying them to do.
Mm.
And so with that, does that mean, and this is a question directly for you, for myself personally, which I think people are going to learn from, does that mean I should, once I do find the firm that I want to use, then I go, hey, can I speak to 2 or 3 property managers and see who I would prefer to use in the firm?
They probably won't want to compete against each other in the firm. You'd have a level of a questionnaire which you can fill out, which is key questions such as, how do you go about resolving minor issues, major issues, and that's a key criteria that I like to look for is when an issue does pop up, do you provide 1 to 3 options of remedying that issue? And often that's the way you want to go because, as you said, it takes up your brain capacity. You're not in that location often, and even if you are, you don't want to have to drive around to your property to try and fix it yourself. That's what you pay a manager for, and they're there to give you those options. You'd have a key person that you'd want to stick with, but you can also let them know that if it doesn't work out with this one individual person, what other alternatives do you have? But seeking the person with the most experience up front is key, and sticking with them is also very helpful with your journey.